Hey, cool cats and kittens. It's the Norfolk Lion here with It's Tats, and this is another episode of The Jedi in Exile. Matthew, how are you?
Yeah, good thanks, mate. Just can't get over that intro, loving it.
Yeah. Right, today we are discussing The Phantom Menace, episode one in the Star Wars series. What we liked, what we disliked, and we will be giving it a score out of 10 at the end. Now, we've done a few videos like this before, reaction videos. You guys have seemed to have really liked the reactions and the review videos that we do. So remember to like this video and subscribe and comment. Do the whole thing for us. Really helps us out, and thank you for the continued support of you guys at the moment. So, Matthew, talk to me. Everybody knows the story of Phantom Menace. We don't really need to go into too much detail, but talk to me a little bit about your thoughts on Phantom Menace.
So do you know what? I think it gets a bad rep.
Yeah,
That
it's
that,
not got a great.
but I don't think it necessarily deserves it. I think a lot of people tend to get kind of bogged down in the things that they dislike about it, and use that to justify hating on the movie as a whole.
I think people just when they think of Phantom Menace, they think of Jar
Jar
Jar.
Jar, yeah, and
That's literally what springs
but
to mind.
but this is my point. I think that you wouldn't go, like, none of the Star Wars movies are perfect. Blasphemous, I know, right, for me to say that, but none of the Star Wars movies are perfect. So would you pick a single flaw out of your most loved Star Wars movie and go, but that's why it's a bad movie? Like, you know what, I love that movie, but it's a bad movie because of one flaw. Of course you wouldn't. So I feel like it's treated slightly unfairly. We get some absolutely awesome stuff
Yeah, we
within
do.
this,
Yeah,
and I think one of the key things that drives this forward is we're aware of Obi-Wan from A New Hope. We get him for a very short period of time, but we actually get to see kind of the whole Obi-Wan Qui-Gon dynamic and the sort of influence that
yeah, I
Qui-Gon's
love
had,
this.
you know?
Yeah, the interaction. I think that was what was good about this film, that we actually saw quite a lot of the master and apprentice interaction between Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon. And this film, I mean, as a whole, is such a departure from the original films, and a lot of that is clearly driven by the technology, by ILM, the company that did that, Industrial Light and Magic. Um, they did all of the effects. They built huge models, but the CGI just improved. So Phantom Menace is just, even though it's set before the original trilogy, because of technology, everything just seems so much more advanced, and it was just so different to the originals. And I think if you'd grown up with the originals, you wouldn't necessarily like the prequels, would you? You kind of fall into that. I was raised on the prequels. I don't necessarily like the sequels. Um,
Yeah, so let's address the elephant in the room, right? A lot of the haters of the prequels tend to be fans of the original trilogy. A lot of the haters of the sequels tend to be fans of the prequels because they feel like, because they come in and do something different and the technology is different, and what is accessible to the filmmakers at the time, and the way that people try to tell stories changes across generations, that they don't see it as their Star Wars. And I think what people need to remember is that Star Wars has always been something that's kind of semi-political, and has taken inspiration from, you know various parts of the zeitgeist of the time, and therefore people that grew up on the original trilogy were living those things, and it captured their era and what they were living and what they were experiencing. And it's the same for the prequel. So the fact that that was different jars a lot of people, because if
yeah,
they weren't growing up around that time and experiencing some of those things,
yeah,
they didn't necessarily kind of track with it. It's I can relate to Obi-Wan quite a lot in regards to, he's the younger guy who's got an older influence but then loses the older influence and has to try and find himself. And as somebody that was growing up through the prequels, you relate to that a little bit, right? Because you're like, oh, this is me coming of
yeah,
age, and this is definitely,
yeah.
we see him come of age through this.
Yeah, definitely. And I really like that we see Obi-Wan as the Padawan, because it's like we're gonna see the circle. because we know that he's the old Jedi Master. Um, the kind of one rung underneath Yoda, if you like, in the originals. It's nice to see him as a Padawan, that we see that full journey, because they could have quite easily just had Obi-Wan as a Jedi Knight. Wouldn't have really like ruined the story at all or anything. They could have gone a different way with it. That Obi-Wan is, 30 odd and has been a Jedi for ages, but we see him with his master, and I just think that dynamic with Qui-Gon, and Liam Neeson is a really good Qui-Gon. I have to say, plays the role really, really well. I just really like that dynamic.
Yeah, no, definitely. One of the things that I really like is there's the scene when they've gone down to Naboo and they're running from the tanks and stuff. That Obi-Wan drops his lightsaber and Qui-Gon gives him it back, and it's very reminiscent of the Attack of the Clones, the "this weapon is your life" type thing when he gives it to him,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah,
kind of that. It's really nice to see that kind of track through because it's kind of that. Obi-Wan has that mentality because Qui-Gon's instilled it into him, and then he's instilled it, trying to instill it into Anakin.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
um, that's pretty cool to see. Um,
And I also like as well Ewan McGregor, how he played Obi-Wan, in that you didn't want to base it all on Alec Guinness, because Alec Guinness, Obi-Wan has been a hermit for 20 years, and by the time A New Hope comes around, but you could imagine that that was a young Alec Guinness, that was a young Obi-Wan. Like, he's got a couple of witty comments, like, "You were right about one thing, Master. The negotiations were short,"
yeah,
and like and all that. Like, he's got a little bit of wit, but not too much. He's very much like a younger Alec Guinness, and I
yeah,
like that.
yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. I think solid, and as we said, it's really cool kind of thing to see. Um,
Yeah,
Obviously we talked about the technology that was available at the time and the kind of the CGI and stuff. And out of the back of that, we got some really cool kind of action shots, not necessarily fighting, but still actiony. So kind of things that I'm kind of focusing on and want to pull out specifically are we get the pod race scene.
yeah,
As well as that, we get the starship battle above Naboo when Anakin kind of takes the Naboo starfighter up and
yeah. And we learn that spinning is a good trick.
spinning is a good trick. Newsflash, everybody, we can confirm spinning is a good trick. Um, but I think again, it was that kind of massive step up from people that grew up on the original trilogy, where a lot of it, well, I say a lot of it, basically all of it was physical models, and they did a whole bunch of like layering and filming certain things and chroma key in the background out and laying it over the top of miniature sets and stuff. And there's actually a really good documentary called Behind the Magic, I think it is, that's available on Disney Plus, that kind of actually really goes into the depth of that. And this kind of replaced that. This was this kind of full CGI way of looking at things, and it meant that we could get things like, I mean, I know that this is a still from the movie, so you've got another pod racer spinning off in the background, exploding, but just look at the detail on the
Yeah,
engines and everything.
I think that's Sebulba's pod right at the end, isn't it? When they become entangled, and then he manages to get out. Um, but yeah, I mean, the graphics on this film were just amazing. And considering only like 15 years had passed since Return of the Jedi, just the advancement in technology meant that George Lucas could do um, so much more with this.
Well, he said
And I think, oh, go on.
he famously said that when he released Jedi, he had already kind of knew what he wanted to do for 1, 2, and 3, but he wanted to wait because he knew that the technology wasn't there to support his kind of vision and what he wanted to do with it all. So yeah, the fact that it came on leaps and bounds within in that kind of short space of time, and we got something so different from the kind of polished and finished article of Jedi to this is kind of pretty impressive, to be honest.
Yeah. I think what Phantom Menace actually did quite well is, and again, I suppose the technology helped with this, is we got thinking about characters like, again, they didn't have to put R2 and C3PO in, but we see like their kind of origin and how they get together. We see more planets as well. So we actually see a little bit more, and that's with where the models come in handy. Like we see Naboo. I'm back. Am I here? Am
Yeah,
I
yeah,
here? I'm
yeah,
back.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
But we see all the planets, the new ones that are introduced. We've still got a bit of nostalgia with Tatooine. I think it's quite nice that you see that other side to the original trilogy. So we get, yes, the Tatooine like the old school, but we get Coruscant, which, polar opposites. We get, all of everything that you want to be explained. You want to see Jedi. You want to see how things were beforehand. There's just so much that this film introduces and kind of almost reintroduces because we realize that this is the fourth film, but it's actually the first.
Yeah.
So it does a really good job of just subtly dropping in, characters, planets. I think
Well,
it's quite well worked like that.
we get things like, and we were talking about it just before we came on to record. We get things like, you know, from A New Hope, we get the Jedi were, the peacekeepers of the galaxy and all of that kind of stuff. But like you said, we don't really know what that meant. And for such kind of an integral part of the story and big question marks around it from the original trilogy, we get we get this scene of the Jedi Council, but actually, again, other than Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, we don't see that much of the
No.
Jedi. And Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan aren't necessarily what you would class as stereotypical Jedi either. That Qui-Gon's very famously not seen eye to eye with the council on things and
Yeah,
deliberately didn't.
if you would just follow the code, you'd be on the council, is
Yeah.
what Obi-Wan says to him. So clearly, Qui-Gon's a bit of a rebel.
So we actually don't learn that much, but we still get them there as this kind of link between episode 4 and episode 1, so that people feel like they have somewhere to place this. They feel somewhere that they have some
And they
roots and
feel
some
like it was
connections.
a big order because when Alec Guinness does that speech of for a thousand generations the Jedi Knights were the guardians of peace and justice in the Old Republic before the Empire, before the Dark Times. You don't know how big the Jedi are from that, but you realize, I think, in Phantom Menace quite quickly when you see the five spires of the Jedi Temple, like there are thousands of Jedi.
Yeah.
And so for them to then be kind of exterminated and almost made extinct is a testament to how much the Jedi crumbled. And I think it puts a lot into context. Obi-Wan having this kind of reminiscent flashback, if you like, to Luke.
Yeah,
And I think it puts more emphasis on that, of how distraught like Obi-Wan would be in the desert of Tatooine.
and I think we have to kind of also give credit where credit is due in that. Okay, we get this scene with Anakin in front of the council, or in front of some of the members of the council, but they didn't do tons. But it definitely set the stage for kind of extra extra content and extra kind of mediums to take in Star Wars. So I know that a lot of this stuff isn't canon anymore because it's been moved out into Legends, but at the time it would have been canon. We got the Mace Windu Shatterpoint novel off the back
Yeah,
of Mace Windu being introduced in Episode 1. Um,
yeah.
Obviously Yoda, again, that link from the original trilogy being pulled in, that we see this character, and we actually kind of now get a much more context as to why Yoda behaves in the way that he does, in that he had such a high standing within
Yeah,
the existing
exactly.
order.
Yeah. And the fact that he is the Grand Master, so of course Luke needed to go to him because I feel like some of the people's questions in like 4, 5, and 6 is why did Obi-Wan not want to train Luke to begin with? Um, Obi-Wan doesn't mention that, and then Obi-Wan's like, right, you need to go to Yoda. He's the Jedi Master who trained me. And so I think that answers that with Yoda being so, you know, he's the top tier of the Jedi Council.
yeah, I just think that people forget about a lot of this stuff when they criticize these movies. That this was the platform for the prequels, and as much as the prequels, like, as a whole, don't get necessarily such a great reputation, it maybe deserves a little bit of credit for introducing these people and allowing us to see a little bit more. I guess a couple of other people that we get to see within this, we get to see the Trade Federation guys, and this kind of sets up the whole war for the
Yeah, it's
prequel
the whole
trilogy.
storyline, isn't it? It's all on, like, again, I suppose what you're going through, the Rebel Alliance was based on the Vietnam War, um, with the Rebel Alliance being kind of loosely based on the Vietnamese, and the Empire being like America. You've got the Trade Federation, are blockading a country which is very like 80s and 90s, with like apartheid, with African countries, with or how we lived in that world, with trade being such a big deal. Um, so again, going back to your point earlier with Star Wars, relating to what you're living through at the time, that's kind of what people would have been used to, like trade wars. Think of China.
No, I completely agree, and these guys came in and again, and this is one of the things that I really want to praise the Phantom Menace for doing, is using characters and using them efficiently and using them well. So we needed a face to the Trade Federation, right? Because
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense for us to just have this nameless like body that's got no face to it, and kind of is taking on you know a planet and causing all of these issues. But they don't actually get that much screen time. So we get Newt Gunray, who's the guy on the right there,
Mm.
is the kind of the main one. And if you read the Plagueis novel, or if you want to go back and watch our video that we did on the story of Darth Plagueis that covers off what happens in the novel, it's available on our channel. You kind of understand that these guys were put here to be puppets of the Sith, and this is all like a long-standing play. But we don't get that much screen time of them, but they're really kind of impactful on the story and on the plot. And again, it sets up things in the future. We see them again in the other prequels movies, and we learn a lot about them, and we understand who they are and how they fit into the equation very
I
easily.
Yeah, I think that something that was really well done is that the fact that they're so cowardly, they don't want to go and face the Jedi as soon as they hear that there's Jedi coming to negotiate. They're like, oh no, we're not stepping in with them. It kind of enables Padme or Queen Amidala to be such a strong character when she talks to them and faces off with them. So there was those kind of polar opposites, that because they're so cowardly, Queen Amidala seemed so strong, and like that strong kind of woman and female character almost again reminded you of Princess Leia from the original. So there was that kind of, almost nod, if you like, to the original trilogy.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is, I'm gonna go back to it. You can't just write this off as a bad movie because you didn't like a single
No,
there's a single character that you
no,
didn't
no,
like.
absolutely not.
And if you take a look past that, you do see lots of reflections of the original
Mm,
trilogy in this. One of the things that is really kind of important in A New Hope is Luke goes through a transformation because he loses his family, right?
mm.
He loses Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru. And one of the characters that we get introduced to in this, and we see again a dynamic and a relationship, is Shmi. Um,
Old Shmi.
exactly. We get this Anakin kind of being taken away from her, and Qui-Gon
Mm,
obviously tries to take both of them, and Watto doesn't agree to that as a deal, so
yeah.
has to take Anakin over Shmi. But this was really the events of Attack of the Clones, and ultimately the events that turn Anakin, are really set here.
Yeah,
The
they all stem from this.
the
Yeah.
fact that he is kind of taken away and leaves, and it
Was the fact that he's seen as the chosen one, he's taken away, but the Jedi don't really trust him. So you've got, like, especially Mace Windu and a lot of people in the Jedi Council and the Jedi Order, don't think he should be trained, don't think he's the chosen one. So are kind of fairly distant to him, which again makes him kind of distrust the Jedi
resent
and
them a
help
little
him
bit.
turn.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. And that plays a part in him, you know, turning to the dark side. Also, the fact, like you're saying, that he has to leave his mum and he's old enough to realize that. Because most Jedi are taken as babies or toddlers and they can't remember their family. But, as Vin Diesel says, it's all about family.
family's everything. I think uh, we can't talk about the Phantom Menace without talking about the absolutely incredible,
The Dawn.
yeah, the fight scene that we get at the end of the Phantom Menace. So we get Duel of the Fates, which this is, I would argue, one of the best, if not the best. I know everyone's going to have opinions on what they think is the very best, but this is
Yeah.
definitely one of the best lightsaber fight sequences in Star Wars.
And I think what makes it so cool is that it's a 2-on-1, and also the choreography of it is just so much better than the originals
Yeah,
for obvious reasons. Like the Obi-Wan or the Ben Kenobi against Vader fight in A New Hope, terrible. We understand why. The lightsabers were too heavy. They could only hold them with two hands. Empire Strikes Back isn't really a huge battle because Luke isn't really that experienced. Vader uses kind of tactics against him, just throwing loads of objects at him with the Force, wallops the hand off, he's done. Return of the Jedi, it's a little bit better, but this is like where you're like, wow, wow, this is incredible.
well,
Like,
it's just a mile
yeah,
a minute, like fast paced,
would they?
intense.
I think I'm back.
Yeah, the joy of trying to record something when someone's 500 miles away, mate, and you have to do it
Yeah,
over the internet. Eh?
love it, love it. No, I think that they had to slow down the footage of when Obi-Wan went after Qui-Gon has been killed. Spoiler alert. Um, that when Ewan McGregor and Ray Parks are doing the fight, they had to slow that down slightly because they learnt the choreograph and they were doing it so quickly. So they just had to like slow it down
Yeah, in
slightly.
post, in editing,
Yeah,
they slowed it
absolutely.
down.
But it is a really good fight, and we believe, and so does Dave Filoni, and you can watch our one of our videos which we go through this. This is the most important fight in the arc of Star Wars because this is the fate of Anakin. So it's got that, it's like a super cool, awesome fight, but there's also some kind of meaning behind it. Like this is the fate of Anakin Skywalker here. If Qui-Gon wins, maybe the story doesn't go as we see in the originals. We all know that obviously that's probably not going to happen, but it's a really cool fight. And Darth Maul as a baddie, I mean, he just oozes Sithness.
Yeah,
He's just
well,
incredible.
they've basically gone, oh, what colours do we associate with Sith? Red for their lightsabers and black for their robes. What are we going to do? Just create a character that's just
Yeah,
black and red.
yeah,
We
absolutely.
can't
And
be
it's
any more on the nose than making him the colours that represent the Sith kind of way of life.
yeah, and it's interesting. He doesn't have many lines. He's got like those couple of lines where he's like, "At last we will reveal ourselves to the Jedi. At last we will have revenge."
Famously voiced
And
by Big Peter Serafinovich.
yeah, absolutely. And then you've got also to flip it. So he's the main kind of bad guy in this film, when we know that we're looking for the Emperor, for Palpatine, and obviously we don't really see a lot of him. We see him as a senator, and then we see him in the
We see him in
hooded
the
robe.
hologram kind of pulling some strings behind the scenes.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, yeah. And so we he's set up obviously as somebody who's almost like behind the scenes, like looking on. And that's why he's clearly manipulating, the Trade Federation, Maul, they're all just pawns in his, I suppose, big. big plan.
master plan.
Mm.
Yeah, and I think this fight scene absolutely class. Like you said, it sets up the fated arc. And Brian mentioned it. We've done a video where we kind of react to chat, give some commentary on a talk that Dave Filoni did. It's on the channel, so go give it a watch. He calls it the fated arc, and he kind of explains much better than I can. So you know, got to tip your cap to Dave Filoni and the way that he understands Star Wars. But it kind of explains how the outcome of this fight sealed Anakin's fate. And for that reason alone, forget all the other arguments we've had as to why this is an amazing movie. For that reason alone, this movie is up there and needs to be respected a little bit more than it is, I think.
Yeah, so come on then. A score out of 10. What do you think this film is rated as? What would you give it out of 10?
Personal score, or trying to be like
No,
slightly.
I think what do you think of what would you give this out of 10?
I'd give this a 9.
What did he say?
Would you really?
Yeah.
I feel like I might need to change my score.
I would give this a 9. I think that the Jewel of the Fates is so important to setting up everything. But I also feel like, for me personally, and I know that we've talked about this before when we did our ranking video, but this was the first Star Wars movie that was released in the cinema since I was born. So for me, it holds a really special place of I got to experience going and seeing it on the big screen, being introduced to new characters. This, for me, was my A New Hope.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. Listen, I'm in the same boat. I had loads of the action figures. It was, it was a cult, the cult following like you see in 77, when A New Hope came out. See, I was thinking more of a 7 out of 10, only because I feel like I love the battle droids. I love that it's different to the stormtroopers. I was gonna say 7 out of 10, but I feel like maybe I should go 8 out of 10. I just don't really like the Gungans as characters.
Do you
I
know
think
what?
that they are just a little bit silly.
Yeah, okay, and I can say that. I can see that. I think
They're a bit too comical.
Jar Jar more than the others. Boss Nass, I actually think that as much as he does all of the like weird like stuff. Yeah, exactly, there you go. As much as he does that, like, I don't think that was necessarily silly. I think that was giving a character something that made him a bit different and a bit quirky. I do think that during the fight, there's all the silliness, but again, mostly it is around Jar Jar more than anything, more than anybody, more than anybody else.
I think there's a difference between a character saying funny things and a character being funny.
Well, there's
like people laugh with.
Of course, he goes just as he starts saying stuff.
People laugh with Obi-Wan. They laugh with Qui-Gon. They laugh kind of with Yoda. They're laughing at Jar Jar. And I think that's probably the difference for me. So I'm going to give it an 8.
Okay, and that's fair. I'm going to go bold with my 9, and I'm gonna say it with chest, and I'm going to say that you take Jar Jar Binks out of this movie, and it's a perfect 10. That's how strongly I feel about the way this movie is. I think
it's a great start to the Skywalker saga.
It's paced well. It sets the foundations for Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith so well, and it will always hold a really special place in my heart.
Yeah, and just the right amount of action.
Yeah, exactly. You get a really short fight sequence between Qui-Gon and Maul on Tatooine.
Yeah.
You get the pod race and the space battle, and you get Duel of the Fates. Boom. Perfect. Really good pacing.
Yeah, and you get that nice introduction of Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan using their lightsabers against the battle droids at various points, but you get it at the start quite nicely, where it's not too much. We're not straight in with lightsabers. So no, I like it. That's our summary. I think that's a good summary.
Yeah, so you guys let us know down in the comments below what what did you think of the Phantom Menace? What would you give it out of 10? What key things did you like? Maybe you like Jar Jar Binks. Maybe you believe in the Darth Jar Jar theory. Let us know down in the comments below. As always, if you've enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing. Please feel free to share it out to anybody that you think might also enjoy it. We're really trying to build some support on this channel. We appreciate all the support you guys have been giving us. And until then, guys, we will see you guys all in the next one.
See you soon. May the force be with you.